All right, guys, we're going to start this show here very shortly. Monday edition of the I Love CVille show. Give the show a like and a share wherever you're watching. Live all over social media. No matter the stream you are watching on, we would love to hear from you. We very much encourage participation on the talk show. In fact, a lot of the topics today are influenced by viewers and listeners, including Bob Yarborough. If you're watching the program, Bob, we got a topic here directly for you that you passed along to us that we're very grateful for. We were talking last week about the need to hire within the community, and it was in relation to economic development. Economic development is good for a community, but what could be challenging for a community if the economic development that happens, if it brings folks from outside Central Virginia to pursue the jobs that are created. And Bob Yarborough was highlighting last week, and he's a well-read man, former journalist, man who's worked for Habitat for Humanity nationally, and just an all-around A-plus guy, just a great guy, the kind of guy you want to saddle up at a brewery with and shoot the proverbial you-know-what. He said, look, if we're going to have economic development, it needs to be done in a way where hiring within the community is fostered and encouraged, and it can be done through strategic partnerships within the community that drives that hiring. And one of these strategies literally is taking place in our community 4 or 5 days after we were talking about it, which I think is super cool. Carol Thorpe, welcome to the program. She's the queen of Jack Jewett. Carol, you and your family are very generous. Thank you for the gift for our newborn, our son number 2. Thank you kindly, Carol. El Mariachi looks like it's watching the program, and Johnny Ornalis, we love you guys. El Mariachi in Zion's Crossroads is absolutely fantastic. J-Dubs, you see this up here? Is a little, maybe that's just my screen. Never mind. Job well done. You got it right. That's good. J-Dubs is Judah Wickhauer, director of our show. Kevin Higgins, hello, the king of Greenwood. Welcome to the program. Let us know how the school buses are doing in Greenwood, Kev. Any improvement with the school buses? Kevin Yancey and I were talking over the weekend in one of the comment sections on the I Love CVille network about the need to get kids to school on time and faster. We're both in agreement, Kevin and I, that kids should get to school faster. Kevin, I love Higgins and Yancey when you guys comment and watch the show. I want to talk about this topic to start the show. Why are there 9 candidates for a 1-year interim position on the school board? It's a 1-year position. It's an interim position. Yet we can't get candidates to run for a 4-year term to the point where these contests and these elections are going unopposed. Is that not a head scratcher? John Blair and Neil Williamson got me thinking about this. I'll kind of try to put this in a nutshell for you guys again. We have 9 people that are looking to fill the interim spot on the school board. Whitehall District, Albemarle County. But in years past, we can't get any competition for the 4-year term to the point where people are running unopposed. We'll have that conversation to start the show. Judah Wickhauer, Jerry Miller, the I Love CVille show. You got a 2-shot with a hot mic for you. That way we can bring you in on the rents dropping in the area topic. All right, I'm ready to rock and roll, Judah, when you are.
Quiet on the set.
Good Monday afternoon, guys. I'm Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love CVille show. Thank you kindly for joining us. It's great to connect with you guys through the I Love CVille network, a network that's presented today by the Clifton in Keswick. The Clifton is just a special place, and it's special for so many reasons. It's special for dinners and date nights and the kind of dining experiences that make memories with loved ones. The Clifton has a happy hour that's fantastic. They are a venue for special events like weddings and corporate retreats. The Clifton in Keswick is a venue and a restaurant that you will remember for years to come. The Clifton in Keswick. So much to cover on today's show. I'm going to ask you guys some questions, and then I'm going to try to answer them. But I'm hoping to get some participation from you, the viewer and listener, on some of these topics. We crowdsource our topics from you, the listening and viewing audience. We welcome your perspective, and your perspective is woven into the rundown, which is the headlines you see on screen. One of the topics we'll talk about today was a topic that Neil Williamson and John Blair had me thinking about over the weekend. And I'll try to put it in a nutshell here. This past Thursday, nine people are competing for a one-year interim spot on the school board, the Whitehall District, which is one of 7 seats on Albemarle County School Board. David Oberg resigned for health reasons, not him specifically, but someone in his family. He needed to spend more time with a family member. I'll have him explain that when he comes on the show soonish. Here's a question that I think is really good. And Neil asked this question, and John Blair got me thinking about it. Neil last week on Friday asked this question. You have 9 school board candidates for an open one-year interim seat on the school board, but all the school board seats ran unopposed in the last election cycle. Maybe someone can help answer this question. I have some answers, but I want to hear from you, the viewer and listener. I'll give you the question again from Neil Williamson, the president of the Free Enterprise Forum. Jerry and Judah, you have 9 school board candidates that are looking to fill an open one-year interim seat, the Whitehall District. But in the last election cycle, all the seats on the school board were unopposed in the last election cycle. This was John Blair's response to Neil's comment. Anything John Blair writes, I listen to and read very closely. He says, this is an interesting topic, Jerry and Neil. It's not just Albemarle County, but nearly every governing body and school board in Virginia. When there is a vacancy, plenty of candidates will apply. For example, in Pittsylvania County had 6 applicants in October for a seat on its Board of Supervisors. However, almost no one will ever actually file to run for office. I don't think the salary is a factor, John Blair writes. After all, he says, if it was, why would people be so eager to apply for these positions? I think it's something about electoral politics in this day and age. What is it about the actual process for running for office that is so off-putting to so many? Is it gathering signatures? Is it raising money? Is it the paperwork? What reforms should we consider to get more individuals to run for local office? This is a great topic, and this is the lead of today's show. I have some ideas and some answers as someone who is going to get civically involved, and details on that on the near horizon. When you're filling an interim position, like this Whitehall District school board seat, the rigmarole, the vulnerability, the exposure is next to nothing. You had 9 candidates talk for 20 minutes in front of the school board on Thursday in basically a completely empty auditorium. The extent of the media coverage was Mary McIntyre, and if you're listening or watch this show in real time, Mary, or in post time, I think you do a fantastic job of live tweeting school board meetings. Mary McIntyre, who's an Albemarle County middle school literacy specialist, she live tweeted the 9 candidates and their 20-minute apiece sessions with the school board. I thought that was the best coverage. The second best coverage was Alice Berry of the Daily Progress, who wrote a story about this a day or two after the 9 candidates interacted with school board members. That's the extent of these 9 candidates from an exposure standpoint, a vulnerability standpoint, and by exposure and vulnerability, here's what I mean. When you run for office, the period of time is months, if not longer, like a year plus. And in that time of campaigning or announcing that you're going to run for office, those months or a year plus, you can be a target on social media for folks that don't like you. And those folks on social media, often behind profile pictures that are not their faces and names that are not associated with their actual real life identity, they choose to target you with slanderous commentary or negative commentary, mean-spirited commentary. And that is vulnerability. Furthermore, these months or a year plus in some circumstances of announcing that you're going to run for office, it could lead to challenges you did not anticipate. Here are some examples. When you run for elected office, you're very transparent in all aspects of your life. These 9 candidates for this interim seat, part of what they had to do with interacting with the school board is indicate where their children were going to school, whether they had children, where they were going to school, the age of their children. And that can be challenging for a lot of people. If a school board candidate has a child that is in private school or out of school or does not have kids, that's a topic that's going to come up. If a board of supervisor has children that is in out of school, in the public school, in the private school, or in preschool, that may be a topic that comes up. And answering those questions about the loved ones you hold so dearly, your children, can be extremely challenging for people. I think the transparent nature of local government also includes, financial transparency. Some folks may not want to offer transparency when it comes to their financials. This is a topic that's come up in some of these, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not the boards, but what are the and I'm drawing a blank on the name here. And maybe Carol, you can help me on this, or Bob Yarborough, you can help me on this. You're not on the board. It's not the boards that I'm talking about. What are the groups that are right under the boards that people can volunteer for? They're often not paid positions, but they're still civically engaged positions. Maybe you call them committees. Some of these unpaid positions require financial transparency to be a part of them. So here folks are wanting to get civically engaged, but then having to showcase financial information that's, that's personal information, That could prevent people from getting involved civically. As Carol has said on the feed, door knocking or voter vetting through candidate forum questions when applying for appointment is also challenging. When one gets to test out how the demands of the position fits into one's life for 1 year rather than committing to 4 years if elected, that's why you may see more people going after this 1-year spot. Still, I think it's an important topic. Why do we have 9 people going after a 1-year interim spot, yet we have unopposed 4-year terms? What is the barrier of entry that's creating unopposed 4-year terms? Is that barrier of entry the door knocking? Is that barrier of entry the signature getting? Is that barrier of entry the time commitment? Is it the payment? Or is that barrier of entry the exposure and backlash, the vulnerability that undoubtedly arises in this day and age of social media keyboard muscles, if you may? It's no secret that if you run for office or if you're fortunate to get elected, you're going to have half the community lukewarm in your corner and the other half either not caring about you or angry with you. And it's no secret that it's extremely time-consuming to do these jobs. But I found it, and so did John and so did Neil, and that's why I led with it on this show. I found it curious that you'd have 9 people for an interim spot, but the last election cycle, the school board spots ran unopposed. It's a good talking point. It's also a reason why you see such a stranglehold on certain positions. When Ann Malik ran for school board, 4 terms ago? Almost 5 terms ago? Social media was not nearly what it is now. Diantha McKeel's been in elected office on the school board or the Board of Supervisors for almost 25 years. In the mid-90s, social media didn't even exist. When Malik first got on the board, social media was only a photo of your food or an opportunity for you to get a significant other or pursue a girlfriend or boyfriend. Now it's 24/7, 365, keyboard muscles and folks flexing behind profile pictures that look nothing like themselves. Cartoon characters at times. And I think the youthful candidates that are younger, are extremely aware of the exposure or vulnerability that comes for running for positions like this because they grew up in this era. And because they are so aware of this exposure and vulnerability, many are unwilling to take the civically engaged effort because of that fear. It takes not only thick skin to do this, but it takes a mindset of resilience and fortitude and courage to the 9th degree. To the 9th degree. And not only for the person that's running, but their immediate family as well. Comments coming in fast and furious on this topic, and then we'll get to the next one. Kevin Higgins says, we have a school board race, and we can't get kids out of 15-degree weather because a bus cannot get them to school on time. We have a major problem in the county, he says. Carol says stranglehold is correct. With appointments, those in power choose the next to be in power. There's a lot of truth to that. Your board of supervisors are picking your planning commission. Or in the case of the school board, 6 members that are on the board who are undoubtedly very Democrat are choosing the 7th member, the interim. They're going to pick, in fact, they indicated in the interview process, the 6 members, that they wanted to pick a person that would work in a positive or easygoing mindset with the current board members. Think about that. The 6 people on the board are indicating on the record behind the dais that they are going to pick somebody that they know will get along with them on the dais. Think about that. Let's go to comments. This is from the I Love CVille Network's version of Deep Throat. He says, to the school board question, 2 answers. Once school boards have become a hot topic only in the last year or two due to the culture war concerns. 2, being appointed has a heck of a lot more attractive than having to run a campaign. He's right. Running a campaign is no easy task. The time investment of appointment is nil. The abuse is nil. It's over in a week or 2. Either you get it or you don't. When you run for an open seat, campaigning, the time investment is significant, the abuse is significant, and it takes months before you figure out an answer. That's a good comment there from Anonymous, the I Love CVille version of Deep Throat. All right, I want you to consider that topic. And this is it before I move on to the next one. Why do we have 9 people pursuing a 1-year interim spot? Yet last election cycle, that same school board had all races run unopposed. That's a cocktail conversation starter. That's a coffee talk topic right there. Neil Williamson's Free Enterprise Forum released the Q3 retail report. Neil was kind enough to send it to us this morning. Thank you, Sir Neil Williamson. We've dubbed him the king of content. You can find this information on the Free Enterprise Forum website. I'll read a couple paragraphs from the report, and this is directly from what Neil wrote. According to the Virginia Department of Taxation reports, this year, Central Virginia localities received over $5 million more in local option sales tax revenue compared with this point in 2021. Recently released sales tax collection numbers indicate retail and internet sales growth in all 7 Central Virginia localities tracked by the Free Enterprise Forum. It is important to note sales tax data is a lagging indicator as it is always a looking in the rearview mirror. Neil reports that Augusta County has the highest year-to-date percentage increase at 19.89%, wow, growth, while Waynesboro had the lowest of 6.55%. So year over year, sales tax revenue increases. Augusta County, basically 20%. Waynesboro, the lowest increase, 6.55%, but still an increase for Waynesboro. Neil writes, when examining actual dollar increases, Albemarle County has the highest year-to-date revenue, total revenue, with increased sales tax revenue of nearly $1.9 million. That makes sense. Albemarle County's got the most people. It's large, and it's got the largest population. So you would expect year-to-date revenue, total dollars spent, would be the largest. The smallest increase in real dollars was Greene County, with an increase year-to-date of $115,000 over 2021. So Augusta County was basically 20%. Albemarle was 11.05% year over year. Charlottesville, 9% year over year. Fluvanna, 15% year over year. Greene, 5% year over year. Louisa, 10% year over year. And Waynesboro, 6.55% year over year. Here's the question I have. And this is a question I asked Neil in this morning's talk show. The sales tax revenue increases. Is it truly more widgets being sold, which is the best scenario, people buying more stuff? Or is the revenue increase a byproduct of inflationary pressures? If your groceries this time last year for a family of 4 cost $200 a week, and those groceries cost, let's use 11%, heck, we'll use 10% just for the sake of numbers of me doing on the fly. Those groceries cost, what, 10% more, $220 more per week for a family of 4 this year because of inflation, that's going to skew the sales tax collection data. That doesn't necessarily mean economic vitality. It just means that things are more expensive. What we really want to see are more things being sold in Q3 2022 versus Q3 2021, year over year, or is it just more expensive to buy those things? Because if it's more expensive just to buy those things, then that's not a good sign for the local economy. It means we have less money to spend. We still have to buy food for our family of 4, so we're still going to spend the amount we need to spend to feed that family. But if that food for our family of 4 is 10% more costly this year versus last year, then that delta, that $20, is being given to food and not another source of economic stimulus. Coffee, breweries, toy stores, clothing stores, you name it. So that's the true indication of economic vitality. How is the inflationary pressures driving these revenues and to what extent? And that's a fair question. That's a question I certainly would want to know. Our friend Jim Hingley is watching the program. I like when you watch the program. Jim Hingley is a Commonwealth's attorney and friend of the program. I love Jim. Smart guy. Jim Hingley sends us 2 direct messages from the Virginia Code. Thank you, Jim. I'm going to read these directly to the viewers and listeners. Okay, and this is in regards to the first topic, financial disclosure requirements. It says, Jerry, I think this is what you're looking for as far as financial disclosure requirements for those serving on local boards, advisory committees. That's what I was looking for, the advisory committees. Thank you, Jim, and the like. This is from Virginia Code 2.2-3112. Prohibited conduct concerning personal interest in a transaction exceptions. A, each officer and employee of any state or local government or advisory agency who has a personal interest in a transaction shall disqualify himself from participating in the transaction if the transaction has application solely to property or a business of governmental agency in which he has a personal interest, or a business that has a parent, subsidiary, or affiliated business entity relationship with the business in which he has a personal interest. Also, he is unable to participate pursuant to subdivision B, 1, 2, or 3. Any disqualification under the provisions of this subsequent subsection shall be recorded in the public records of the officers or employees' governmental agency. I'll copy this code and share it in the comment section of my personal Facebook account. I'm posting it now in the comment section of my personal Facebook account. There's the first one, and here in the second one. Jim, I love when you comment on the show. Here's what I've wondered, Jim. Here's a question for you, Jim. And I always ask it in relationship to realtors first. Why have we never seen, and never's not the right word. As far as my memory consists, and I've dug pretty deep into this, why do we not see realtors on boards of supervisor? And here's a follow-up question for you, sir. How could a realtor vote in any capacity on any real estate development topics, matter, or talking points? Would it not be a conflict of interest if a realtor was on the board of supervisors and that individual, man or woman, was having to cast a vote in favor or against a real estate development, a development that they could later profit on in the sales of homes associated with it? That's a question I have. I'm curious of your take on that, Jim. You know how much I respect you, sir. I would think that would be a direct conflict of interest. Voting in favor of a real estate development that said board of supervisor could later profit on with their day job of selling, buying, helping people buy and sell homes. Would that individual have to recuse themselves from all votes associated with real estate in a board of supervisor setting? Very curious of your take, Jim, on that one. That seems like the definition of conflict of interest, but sir, you are the professional. We got comments coming in fast and furious here. This from, all right, let me see if I can get to these. This is from Travis in Danville. Travis, I love when you watch the show, man. You genuinely make the program better here. And he says, where'd your comment go? I ran for city council in Danville many years ago. Gathering signatures isn't the issue. Most people just don't like the process of reporters and everyone else behind a keyboard pulling their life apart and their family. It's almost as if you can't make one mistake and be human. That's very well said. That's very well said. I mean, you almost just have to you just own them from the beginning. So like, hey, I'm announcing for Board of Supervisors, I'm just talking hypothetically, and when you do, here's something I want to get out and let you know about now. I mean, that's how I would do it. And then you just own it because they're human beings. You just own it from the beginning. I figured you were actively involved with local in Danville in some capacity, Travis, just because of how you comment and the intelligence that you show with so much of your comments on this network. You make the program better, Travis. Kevin, good morning in Waynesboro. And he said commissions that are appointed by local governments require financial disclosures. I want you to think about that. If a local government official appoints you to some kind of commission, and the word I was looking for is commission. Travis, excellent. Thank you, Travis. If a local government official appoints you to a commission, that person is volunteering their time, yet they're required to disclose their financial records for their volunteering efforts. These CACs, if you're disclosing your financial records for a volunteer position, of course that's going to keep people from doing it. Because that's some of the most sensitive data you have. I mean, folks have a hard time doing that when it comes to the loan mortgage process. And that's way more confidential. I'm very curious of your take on that question, Jim, about the conflict of interest that would come with a realtor voting on development issues if they were on the board. Oh, he has an answer for me. He says, that's not a question I would be in a position to give an advisory opinion on. the issue of conflicts of interest that may arise for those who serve on local boards, advisory committees, etc., including real estate agents or brokers hypothetically, are complicated and fact-specific. Virginia has an agency to answer these questions and give guidance. And then he sends me another message. He says, the Virginia Conflict of Interest and Ethics Advisory Council was created by the General Assembly to encourage and facilitate compliance with the state and local government conflict of interests. And then he shows the Virginia codes. The General Assembly Conflicts of Interest Act and the lobbying laws in Article 3 of the Code of Virginia. So maybe that's is that why we've never, who can name the last real estate professional to serve on a board of supervisor in Albemarle County? Who can name the last real estate professional to serve on city council in Charlottesville City? Can anyone name a realtor who has served on the board of supervisors in Albemarle County or in Charlottesville City in the last 25 years? I've been here since 2000. I cannot name a single, and I don't proclaim to be an expert on this by any means. From 2000 to 2022, my 22 years in this community, approaching 23, I follow the news inside and out because that's how I made my living. Either as a print reporter at the Daily Progress, as a TV broadcaster at NBC 29, as a radio broadcaster at Monticello Media and ESPN Radio, and now doing what I'm doing here, where I'm doing live content, long form, where you have to read everything to be able to do something like this. I, in 22 years of being in this community, cannot think of a single realtor that's been on the Board of Supervisors in Albemarle or in City Council. I got a question for viewers and listeners. Who can think of a realtor, a real estate professional that's been on the Board of Supervisors in Albemarle County or the City of Charlottesville in the last 50 years? 50 years. Name one. Can you think of a single one? Anyone have a name they can give me? Anyone? I don't think that it exists. In the last 50 years. Who can name one in the last 75 years? You? Can you?
Sure. Of course I can.
Okay. You make sure you're talking into the mic there. In the last 75 years, can you name a real estate professional on the Board of Supervisors for Charlottesville City Council? Do you know, Jim, you follow this closely. Do you know any, Jim? Anonymous, the I Love CVille Network's version of Deep Throat. Can you name any? And then a follow-up question to that would be, if you are a real estate professional and you're voting on approving or denying a real estate development in the county that you're working within, is that not a conflict of interest? How could somebody vote yes or no on a real estate development if their job is helping people buy and sell real estate? That would seem to me, and I'm just a guy who reads a lot, the definition of conflict of interest. Anonymous sends us one more tweet on the rental market. And I want to weave you into the rental market here. Judah, let's go to a two-shot. Apartment Lists, which is a data aggregation platform, says that rent in Charlottesville dropped last month by 2%.
Okay.
In the Charlottesville area, monthly rents, residential, dropped by 2%.
That would be on rents that are being offered for new rentals, right? Because anybody else would already be locked into
Under lease.
a rate on their lease.
Yeah, under lease. That's correct. That's exactly right. Here's the really damning statistic, though. Since March 2020, so that's close to 3 years,
Yeah.
Rents are up 14.5%. Now, if you chop that 14.5% over a 3-year period, you're looking at an increase of essentially 5% a year. And most rents by lease have escalator clauses in them, where rents go up somewhere between 3 and, depending on how aggressive your landlord is, 7% every year. So that's the thing about data. Anyone can make data say a certain narrative.
Yeah.
So one narrative is rents dropped 2%
Yeah.
last month. And that narrative is rents are dropping, they're stabilizing, they're going down. That's one narrative. The second narrative is, oh, rents dropped 2%, but they've gone up 14.5% since March 2020, so that 2% is worthless. That's the other narrative. The third narrative is, over a 3-year period of time, the monthly rents have gone up 14.5%, so divided by 3, that's less than 5% every year, and rents have to go up every year to keep up with cost of goods and inflationary pressures, or the landlord loses money. Her real estate taxes are going up, the labor to maintain the units are going up, homeowners association dues are going up. That's the third narrative. So that's just an indication of how data can be skewed to reflect the narrative that whoever's relaying that data, their motive. I want your take on this anywhere you want to go. It doesn't even have to be this topic, because I know this is a topic that's near and dear to your heart.
I mean, I don't see a 2% drop having a whole lot of effect on anyone, especially not at the time when, as you said, inflationary pressures are here. And people are already starting to struggle from, whether it's inflation or the rate hikes that we've been going through. We're clearly in a tough time, and seeing a 2% drop after, whether you want to call it a natural rise in rent prices. A 2% drop, I don't think, is going to make a whole lot of difference to most people who are struggling to find a place that they can afford.
Keep going.
What do you want to talk about?
I mean, a 4% increase year over year. Eventually, that's going to get things extremely expensive.
And as I think we've heard from several sources, prices in Charlottesville are already high. So even if you say that a 5% increase every year is normal and natural, and the landlords are just doing what they need to cover their side of the inflation and doing all the upkeep and all the other natural things that come along with owning a rental property. If those prices are already high, then basically nothing's changed. People are going to be struggling because of the naturally high prices of Charlottesville, and as I said, if 2% is if prices are going down marginally, I don't see a lot of people. I can't see a lot of people running out into the streets and jumping up and down and cheering.
Keep going, because I'm doing some numbers here. Keep going.
They're still going to be struggling with, struggling with those prices if they were struggling with prices a month ago or a year ago. A small drop isn't much of a comfort to anyone.
I'll put it, good take. I'll put it in perspective here. Say you take a 4% increase, 4% escalator on a residential lease. 4% is the standard. If a landlord is doing a 4% increase on a residential lease, let's say it's a 1-bedroom, okay? A 1-bedroom, 4% increase year over year. And let's, for the sake of easy math on this talk show, Let's say that one-bedroom apartment in Charlottesville urban ring, within the urban ring of Charlottesville, rents for $1,000 a month. The 4% increase in year 2 would be
$40.
$1,040. So year 2, you're paying an extra $40 a month. $40 a month times 12 months, $480 additionally. Year 3, it goes to $1,081.60. And in year 4, $1,124.87. So that one-bedroom apartment, if it's a 4% increase year over year, that one-bedroom apartment jumps from $1,000 a month to $1,124.87 a month. An additional $124.87 per month times 12 months is an additional $1,498.44 a year, basically $1,500.
That's on the average, though. I think that so we said that over the last 3 years, there's been an average of 14% raise.
14.5.
Yeah.
3 years this March.
But that's just average. So I imagine that there are some landlords who aren't raising rent on their tenants.
I would think that you would find it extremely difficult to find a landlord that does not have a year-over-year escalator.
That might be true. But
I would think those landlords
still argue that there is, because we're talking about an average, there are going to be some that have not raised the price as much as others, which also means
That's fair. I agree with that comment.
Which also means that there are going to be those that have raised higher than the 14%, and I think we both know that because of the changing housing market in the last couple of years, and how much prices have changed, that there are probably a lot of landlords who are going for, they have a tenant move out. They're not like asking a current tenant to to start paying 20% more. But now that the tenant is out, they can come in, clean the place up, and drop the new add the new price, which is whatever.
Here's the question I have for you, and I think what you're saying is true. We got comments coming in here. It's one thing to take a current tenant who may be in a 1-year lease, and that current tenant is in a 1-year lease, and then tells the landlord 90 days before that 1-year lease is up that they want to stay in the place. If that landlord of the current tenant says, okay, you can stay in the place, I'm going to jack your rent up 14.5%. Let's just use that number. Mm. That, in my eyes, is way, call it dirty, aggressive, whatever you want to call it. Maybe you call it the free market. There's that kind of increase, or there's the increase where the tenant is in place for 1 year, notifies the landlord 90 days before the lease is over, I want to leave. And then the tenant waits till they move out, as you say, then spruces up the place, paints it, puts new carpet in, does any necessary repairs, and then chooses to increase the rent 14.5% for whoever wants to come in at that point. Those are two different kind of increases. You would give me that, right?
Yeah, and I would also say that there are probably a lot of people that are in longer-term leases, or at least are renewing every year. And like I said, they might not be, their landlord might not be using the escalator clause. They might be giving them smaller increases. Or
smaller increase is still the escalator.
Or my point being that they're still under the 14%, which means that there are people that are raising more than 14%.
If the people that are raising more than 14%, are they doing it to the current tenant that's in there that wants to stay?
Probably not.
Probably not. They're raising the 14% plus. Once the current tenant leaves, they have to rehab the place and then bring someone in. And I would bet you that increase is as much about getting to market value as it is recouping the sweat equity and the cost of improvements of transitioning from one tenant to another.
Okay. I don't know that that's even.
That's definitely, of course it's relevant. It's a business.
But we're not talking about what the landlord did to the place. We're talking about prices. We're talking about rent prices now.
If the landlord, okay, here's a good example.
I get what you're saying.
If I had a transition,
but none of that matters to the renter.
but it matters to the landlord who owns the property.
But that's not what we're discussing.
Well, the landlord determines the price.
I know.
So a good example is I had a transition, one of mine, at the Villas at Southern Ridge. And it was a one-year tenant. The family was it was a family with two kids, and it was a one-income family, and he was the general manager of a retail store. And then he got redistricted, or he got transitioned to another store within the same brand but out of market. And then we had to go in there and we had to paint the walls. Do a lot of fixing. The transition, not a lot, but some. Those transition costs were in the neighborhood of $2,000 to go from one tenant to rehab the place and to get it ready to go for the next tenant. $2,000. Does that landlord then try to recoup that $2,000 by raising the rent for the next tenant?
Probably.
Or does the landlord just use the 4% escalator that came with the lease and said, even though this tenant's not in here, I'm just going to go with the 4% I like to increase year over year? I would bet you 9 times out of 10, the landlord is, especially the mom and pop landlords, I'm not talking the MSCs out there, the mom and pop landlords, are basing their rental increases on recouping the rehabilitation costs of said unit.
No doubt.
And if that's how, if we think maybe 9 out of 10 are thinking, that's how markets, price points in markets are set.
Okay, but you're still talking about the 14.5%, and you're still ignoring the fact that a lot has happened in the last couple of years. The last year, prices of houses have gone up, what, in some cases 40% or more?
Insane amounts.
Yeah. And from what I've heard from a lot of the guests on our various shows, some of the rental properties are having their prices raised based on the cost of the
taxes,
which are based on the
values of the houses.
Of the house.
That's right.
Which tells me that some of these people are just raising the price of the rental based on a wholly new assessment where the house is now worth $300,000 instead of $250,000.
I think that's a great point. I think that certainly influences price points.
Which tells me that, and what I was getting at earlier, and why I don't think the argument about the landlords really matters, because I think, as I said, there are some landlords that probably they're raising it very small amounts. Maybe they have tenants that have been in there for years.
Maybe there's no mortgage on it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Maybe the tenant took care of the place a little bit better than other tenants, and they didn't have as much rehabilitation costs. So maybe their assessments didn't uptick massive amounts because homes on that block of the city or the county did not sale or trade during this crazy 2-year, 3-year period of COVID.
The point being that they are the low end of the average. The high end of the average is then a lot more than 14.5%. And I would argue that a lot of the places that were on the low end of the rising rent prices probably do have steady renters. got people that they've had in there for a while, who are happy to be there. They probably like the price. They don't want to go looking for something more expensive, which means that the places that are left, the places that are on the market for people looking for a rental, are going to probably end up higher on the average than those other places. So while they may have gone down 2%, it may still be above that 14.5% that you say is standard for 3 years of raising rent prices.
Anonymous says this. The point here, gentlemen, is that Charlottesville rent increases are not a consequence of some extreme squeeze in Charlottesville supply, but rather a reflection of general increase in price level. We are well below the increases at the national level in Charlottesville, Virginia.
All right.
He also adds renewals that don't go to market won't make it onto apartment list stats. Renewals that don't go to market won't make it onto apartment list stats. Renewals are when the tenant stays in place and their rent increases a marginal amount. So if those renewals made it onto apartment list stats, it would lower the number.
Yeah.
Because the renewals would be coming in at price points that are much more nominal than a new tenant replacing another one.
Right.
And then the landlord having to rehabilitate the unit during the transition.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
Regardless, we still have the issue of affordability. Any way you slice it.
Right.
But I think what Judah and I are doing, and what my hope is from this conversation that you get, is you can interpret statistics any way you want.
Yeah.
Like Neil Williamson, and I think Neil is watching now. I love Neil, and I love his report on the Free Enterprise Forum about Q3 retail increase. And in Albemarle County, Q3 2022 versus Q3 2021, Albemarle County saw an uptick, according to the Free Enterprise Forum, of a substantial amount. I mean, we're talking, what, 11% in Albemarle, 9% in Charlottesville year over year? On paper, that's very positive. However, I wonder how much of that increase is due to inflationary pressures.
Right.
Like, are more widgets actually being sold? Or are those widgets just cost more? And if they cost more, that will drive more gross sales tax revenues, but that doesn't mean the average household has more money to spend on said widgets.
Right.
It's a different way of interpreting data.
Yeah.
And I would bet, especially as we've seen CPI uptick year over year.
People are buying less and paying more.
Exactly. I would bet that's a large chunk of this increase. People are buying less and paying more. And I would also bet a large chunk of this increase is internet sales. And say what you want about internet sales, but internet sales aren't necessarily good for the local economy.
Definitely not.
Internet sales for the local economy means automation, and it means less jobs at brick and mortars.
And it means that all that money that's that people are making in this locality,
locality,
is a lot of it, or some portion of it, is being sent out of the jurisdiction.
In some aspects.
Well, if everybody found the cheapest prices on Amazon and started buying from Amazon,
I mean, they could still buy something on the internet from Animal Connection and have it sent to their house in Albemarle County.
they could.
And Amazon, I don't think, is factored into this data. Neil, is Amazon factored into this data? Is Amazon factored into the retail tax data locally? I don't believe it is.
Well, you're the one that brought up the internet.
I brought up the internet in relation to a brick and mortar having an internet website and selling goods from their internet website, putting them in an envelope or a box and mailing it to people. That requires a lot less labor than having the average Joe or average Sally walk into their storefront and buy it from their shelf.
Right.
Walking into the storefront and buying from the shelf means more labor than having a store that puts stuff in a box and mailing it. And a good example is you and I in the I Love Seville merchandise. The sales that we do, which are not vast, happen on the internet. And they consist of stuffing an envelope with a shirt, a hat, sticker, whatever, and taking it to the post office. He says internet sales tax is included since the Wayfair decision. So Amazon is included. Amazon is included, Neil says.
Well, I wasn't specifically talking about the numbers, but the fact that...
Well, I mean, the fact that Amazon's included is definitely not good for the local economy.
Yeah.
Because that's just turning goods into commodities. And whoever can win the price point battle. And of course, Amazon's going to be able to win the price point battle. That's definitely not good for the... So again, what we're showing you is there's very, very many different ways how you can interpret data.
Yeah.
That's the point of what we're trying to make here. And we both made very compelling arguments of interpreting data differently.
Yeah.
That's the gist of what we're trying to pass along to you. I got two positive things that I want to get out, and Bob, I want to save some, I'll bring this up on tomorrow's show, Bob Yarborough. Bob Yarborough sent this to me over the weekend. He's the king of Redfields. He said Piedmont, Virginia Community College, and this article's on NBC 29, launched a new associate degree program in partnership with Willow Tree. PVCC is launching a new 2-year associate degree focused on app and software development. Willow Tree is one of the largest employers of software developers in Central Virginia. It's partnered with PVCC to collaborate on the curriculum and to spearhead the new program. The program is focused on growing professionals and readying people to branch into the technology field by providing them job competencies needed by employers. So here's a good example of figuring out a way to hire within the community, creating new jobs, creating a funnel for those jobs from the community college, teaching the students within the community the skills they need to get these white-collar jobs, and then having these students mature into business professionals with these white-collar skills and make more money, as opposed to bringing people from Silicon Valley, San Francisco, Boulder, Manhattan to take these jobs, which would drive up the cost of living. I'll spend more time on this tomorrow, Bob Yarborough. Bob Yarborough is A+ people, the king of Redfields. We will also highlight on tomorrow's show a holiday market that's happening in Crozet as a positive story. Crozet is putting together a holiday market where vendors, many of them small business owners, can showcase their wares around the community. I personally have a 2 o'clock meeting, so I'm going to close today's show. I want to close today's show with this. Neil and John Blair got me thinking over the weekend about Albemarle County School Board and the Whitehall District. 9 people applied for the interim position, David Oberg's seat, yet last campaign cycle, everyone ran unopposed on the school board. That's a travesty. But it's also an indication of the vulnerability, the exposure, the level of transparency and effort needed to win a campaign. When you're running for local office, you will be picked apart like Thanksgiving turkey by people with keyboard muscles hiding behind fake names and profile pictures that are not synonymous with their face. And that's difficult for people to swallow. And that's probably why you're seeing a lot of elections running with very little competition. Because in the era of social media and digital media and smartphones, people can be very mean-spirited. And some people from a mental makeup are able to withstand that nastiness better than others. It's called fortitude, thick skin, courage. Some folks just don't want to deal with it. And in an interim position, you don't. Because it's a short window and you're appointed. You don't have to campaign. Full-time position, it's a long window. You're campaigning and the exposure is significant. And that requires thick skin, courage, and fortitude. Judah Wickhauer did well today. My name is Jerry Miller. That's the I Love Seville show on a Monday. Good job today. Excellent work. I got a 2. I'm going to be back here before owner's meeting at 5:30. we're going to have to move the stuff out